Hey guys, welcome back. Tonight, we're stepping away from the glow of your screen and walking backward, way backward, into a winter so cold it could crack stone. You're about to discover something remarkable, that the people we casually dismiss as cavemen might have slept better than you do right now, wrapped in your memory foam and climate control. They engineered comfort in conditions that would send most of us scrambling for the nearest hotel. Good thing this isn't your life, because out there, beyond the cave mouth, the wind is sharp enough to steal the breath from your lungs. But here's the thing. You're going to survive this. More than survive. You're going to sleep like you haven't slept in years. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, drop a comment below telling me where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. I love knowing who's out there listening in the dark with me. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing at the base of a limestone cliff, and your breath comes out in clouds so thick they linger in the air like ghosts. The winter sun, pale and distant, barely crests the horizon before it begins its retreat. You've been walking since dawn, and your feet ache with a cold that's worked its way through the fur wrappings and into your bones. Your clan moves beside you, 15 souls bound by blood and necessity, and every one of them is searching the rock face for the same thing you are. A crack in the world large enough to hold you all. This isn't about finding just any shelter. You're looking for the perfect winter cave, and your life depends on getting it right. Too shallow, and the wind will scour you clean. Too deep, and you'll suffocate on your own smoke. Too damp, and the cold will creep into your chest and stay there until spring. If you make it that far, your ancestors have been reading these cliffs for generations. And now you carry that knowledge in your hands as you run your palms along the stone, feeling for the telltale signs. There, your fingers find it. A natural opening, perhaps shoulder width, that breathes out slightly warmer air. You kneel and peer inside, letting your eyes adjust to the darkness. The entrance faces southeast, which means the morning sun will reach inside and warm the stone. But the afternoon winds from the northwest will break against the cliff face before they reach you. Already you're doing mathematics that won't have names for another 100,000 years. You crawl inside, and the temperature shifts immediately. Outside, it's perhaps 20 degrees below freezing. In here, even without fire, the stone holds steady around 40 degrees. That's the first gift of limestone caves. They're thermal batteries, absorbing summer's heat and releasing it slowly through the winter months. Your body recognizes this immediately, and something in your shoulders relaxes for the first time since the snow started falling 3 days ago. The cave extends back about 30 feet before the ceiling lowers to a crawl space. Perfect. Not so deep that smoke will become a problem, but deep enough to hold warmth like a cupped hand holds water. You notice something else. The walls are dry. No seepage, no ice crystals, no black mold creeping across the stone. This matters more than most modern people realize. Damp caves are death traps in winter, turning your body heat into condensation that will soak your bedding and clothing, creating a feedback loop of misery that ends in hypothermia. But this cave is dry as old bones, which means water drains somewhere else, through cracks you can't see, but which save your life nonetheless. You back out and signal to the others. Your sister, the one with the scar across her palm from that fishing accident 2 summers ago, smiles with her whole face. She's been pregnant for 7 months now, and every cave you've checked in the last week has been wrong somehow. Too exposed, too small, too claimed by the brown bears who leave their claw marks high on the walls like hostile signatures. But this one is empty, clean, and waiting. The clan begins unpacking immediately. Here's something that might surprise you. Paleolithic peoples didn't live in caves year-round, like some permanent Stone Age apartment complex. Archaeological evidence from sites across Europe and Asia shows that caves were used seasonally, sometimes just for a few weeks during the worst of winter or the height of summer. They were base camps, not addresses. You might spend autumn following the caribou herds, winter holed up in places like this, spring near the rivers when the fish are running, and summer in the high meadows where the berries grow thick as promises. The cave is a tool, not a home, though for the next 2 months, it will feel like the only home that matters. Your cousin, the young one who never stops asking questions, drags in the first load of firewood. He's been collecting it for days, choosing pieces with the care of a jeweler selecting stones. Dead oak because it burns hot and long. Birch bark for kindling because it catches even when damp. Pine knots for the darkest hours because they burn bright and smell like comfort. He's learned that green wood creates choking smoke, that wet wood steals heat as it dries, that the right fuel is as important as the fire itself. But before any fire is lit, you need to prepare the cave itself. This is where the real genius of Paleolithic survival shows itself. You're not just moving in, you're engineering a microclimate. You start at the entrance, piling loose stones into a low wall that will break the wind without blocking the light. Not too high. You need to see what's coming, whether that's weather or the four-legged kind of trouble. The wall curves slightly, channeling incoming air upward toward the ceiling, where it will mix with the rising heat from your fire, instead of pouring directly across your sleeping area like an invisible river of cold. Then comes the question of where to place the hearth. In Cavemen cave in Israel, archaeologists found a hearth that was used continuously for 200,000 years. Imagine that. Fire after fire after fire, generation after generation, all in the exact same spot. Why? Because that spot was perfect. The distance from the entrance, the height of the ceiling, the natural ventilation, all of it came together in one location, where smoke would rise and escape without pooling, where heat would radiate evenly, where sparks wouldn't reach the bedding. You crouch in the center of the cave and light a small test fire, watching the smoke. It rises, hits the ceiling, and flows toward the entrance in a slow, steady stream. Good. If it pooled or swirled or dove back down, you'd need to adjust everything. But this cave knows its business. The smoke exits cleanly, drawing fresh air in low along the floor, creating a gentle circulation that will keep you from suffocating in your sleep. Your aunt begins sweeping the floor with a bundle of stiff grass, pushing out the debris of previous occupants, mouse droppings, old leaves, the scattered bones of someone else's meal. She's particular about this, and for good reason. Any organic matter left on the floor will attract insects, and insects in winter are desperate, hungry, and persistent. Better to start clean. The children, there are 4 of them, ranging from barely walking to almost ready for their first hunt, explore the deeper recesses of the cave with the fearlessness of the young. They find a small alcove that will be perfect for storing food away from the fire's heat, and another that's just right for tools. One of them discovers a handprint on the wall, ochre red and ancient, left by someone who stood exactly where she's standing now, perhaps 100 winters ago. She places her own hand over it, and they match perfectly. She grins. Now comes the architecture of warmth, and this is where you'll see that these people weren't primitive. They were precise. Every decision you make in the next few hours will determine whether you wake up comfortable or whether you spend the winter in miserable, shivering wakefulness. This is engineering without blueprints, thermodynamics without equations, but it's no less sophisticated for being unwritten. The hearth location has been chosen, but now you need to prepare it properly. You dig a shallow depression, perhaps 6 inches deep and 2 feet across, into the cave floor. This depression serves multiple purposes that compound upon each other like interest. First, it contains the fire, keeping embers from rolling into bedding or supplies. Second, It creates a pool for coals to collect, and coals are your real heat source. Flames are beautiful but inefficient, dancing upward and taking their warmth with them. Coals glow steady and radiate heat in all directions. But here's the clever part. You line the depression with specific stones. Not just any rocks. Certain types will explode when heated, sending shrapnel through the cave like tiny meteorites. You've learned this the hard way, or rather, your grandmother's grandmother learned it, and passed the knowledge down in stories that always started with, "Never use river rocks." River rocks are full of trapped water that turns to steam and builds pressure until the stones simply can't hold it anymore. Instead, you choose limestone, granite, or sandstone from dry areas. These stones have another gift to offer. They become heat batteries themselves. As the fire burns, they absorb warmth, and then, long after the flames have died down to coals, long after you've stopped adding fuel for the night, they continue radiating heat into the cave. It's thermal mass, storing energy for slow release, and it means you can sleep soundly without someone needing to tend the fire every hour. Around the hearth, you arrange larger stones in a loose circle. These serve as both seats and heat reflectors, bouncing warmth back toward the sleeping area. The placement isn't random. You're creating channels for air to flow, for heat to move, for smoke to escape. It's fluid dynamics worked out through trial and error across millennia, and it works beautifully. Your brother-in-law begins building a back wall about 10 feet behind where the sleeping area will be. He uses loose rocks, pieces of wood, packed earth, whatever's available. This wall doesn't need to be solid, or even particularly tall. Its job is to trap a layer of warmer air between itself and the sleeping area, creating an insulating buffer. The back of the cave is always the coldest, because it's the furthest from the fire and the entrance is fresh air. The wall helps equalize temperatures, preventing cold from radiating off the deep stone and into your back while you sleep. Historians still argue whether Paleolithic peoples understood the principles behind what they were doing, or simply noticed that it worked and kept doing it. Personally, I think that's a false distinction. They understood it perfectly, just not in our vocabulary. They knew that fire needs to breathe, that stone holds warmth, that moving air is colder than still air, that height matters, and distance matters, and material matters. They couldn't write the equations, but they could feel the truth of them in their bodies. Now, ventilation. This is the detail that separates a cozy cave from a death trap. Carbon monoxide is odorless, colorless, and absolutely lethal. Too many anthropology books paint a picture of smoky caves where everyone coughed and squinted and died young from lung problems. Some of that is true, but it's also true that successful cave dwellers were obsessive about air quality, because they had to be. You've already seen how the smoke rises and exits naturally, but now you make improvements. Near the entrance, you arrange hides so they can be adjusted, opened wide on mild days to flush out stale air, closed partially on brutal nights to retain heat, while still allowing a gap at the top for smoke to escape. It's a dynamic system, adjusted throughout the day and night based on wind, temperature, and the fire's intensity. Some caves have natural chimneys, cracks in the ceiling that draw smoke upward with surprising efficiency. If you're lucky enough to find one of these, you can build your fire directly underneath and enjoy nearly smoke-free living. The cave you've chosen today doesn't have this feature, but the entrance is positioned such that the prevailing winds create a negative pressure that pulls smoke out naturally. It's not perfect, but it's good enough, and good enough keeps you alive. Here's a quirky detail that archaeologists love. In many Paleolithic cave sites, you can see where people deliberately roughened the cave walls near sleeping areas. They used stone tools to create a textured surface, and for years researchers weren't sure why. Current theory suggests it was for better insulation. The rough surface breaks up convective air currents along the wall, creating a thin boundary layer of still air. Still, air is an excellent insulator. It's the same principle behind double-paned windows, though these people were doing it 70,000 years before glass was invented. Your youngest uncle, the one who always has a joke ready even when his stomach's empty, points out a small alcove high up near the ceiling. "Storage," he says. And he's right. Warm air rises, which means that alcove stays several degrees warmer than the floor. Perfect for keeping water from freezing, for storing rendered fat that you'll need to stay liquid, for keeping certain foods from going dormant cold. Every cubic foot of this cave has a purpose, and you're learning to read the space like a book. The entrance gets special attention. You've already built the low stone wall, but now you add a windbreak made from branches woven together and backed with hides. It's positioned at an angle, not perpendicular to the entrance, so that wind hits it and deflects rather than building up pressure. This also creates a small vestibule, an airlock essentially, where the coldest air gets trapped and mixed with warmer air before entering the main cave. It's maybe 5 degrees of difference, but 5 degrees is the difference between sleep and shivering wakefulness. Someone suggests blocking the entrance entirely at night, sealing yourselves in for maximum warmth. You shake your head. That way lies suffocation. The fire consumes oxygen, and so do 15 human bodies. You need fresh air constantly cycling through, even if it's cold. The trick is to manage the flow, enough to breathe, not so much that you freeze. As the afternoon light begins to fail, the cave is transformed. What was an empty stone chamber this morning is now a carefully engineered living space. The hearth is prepared, the ventilation managed, the walls working in your favor instead of against you. You haven't just moved into the cave, you've made it an extension of your body's own systems, a second skin of stone and fire and careful thought. Your sister lowers herself carefully onto a flat rock near where the sleeping area will be, one hand on her swollen belly. She smiles with relief, and you realize you haven't seen her smile like that in days. The walking has been hard on her, and the uncertainty harder. But now there's shelter, and tomorrow there will be fire, and food, and rest. Tonight you'll all sleep, but first there's more work to do. The cave is prepared, but you're not. Not yet. You need bedding, and that's its own art form. One that Paleolithic peoples mastered with a sophistication that would shock anyone who imagines them sleeping on bare stone like animals. The fire is the heart of everything, and tonight you'll light it with ceremony and care. Your grandfather, the keeper of the coals, reaches into the small leather pouch he's carried against his chest for the entire journey. Inside, wrapped in dry moss and insulated by layers of rabbit fur, are the embers from your last camp. They've been kept alive for 3 days through careful tending, fed tiny slivers of birch bark every few hours, protected from wind and rain like the treasures they are. This might seem excessive to someone who can strike a match or flick a lighter, but you understand the mathematics of fire starting intimately. Starting fire from scratch, whether by friction with a bow drill or striking sparks from flint and pyrite, takes time, energy, and materials. It's exhausting work even when conditions are perfect, and when your hands are numb with cold and your tinder is barely dry enough to catch, it can take an hour or more of sustained effort. An hour you don't have when the sun is setting and the temperature is plummeting. So the coals travel with you, generation to generation, camp to camp. In a very real sense, the fire you're about to light is the same fire your ancestors lit 10,000 winters ago. It's never gone out, just moved, carefully, lovingly, from hearth to hearth to hearth. The continuity of it is staggering when you stop to think about it, though you rarely do. It's simply how things are done. Your grandfather kneels at the prepared hearth and begins building the fire structure with the precision of ritual. First, a small nest of shredded birch bark, the finest fibers, almost like hair. Around this, slightly larger pieces of pine kindling, arranged in a loose teepee that allows air to flow while still protecting the growing flame from drafts. Then pencil-thin twigs, then finger-thick branches, then wrist-thick fuel wood. Each layer is placed deliberately, creating a structure that will catch and grow from small to large without intervention. He opens the pouch and tips the glowing embers into the nest of birch bark. Smoke rises immediately, a thin, pale stream that makes your heart lift with relief. He leans close, cupping his hands around the nest, and begins to blow. Gently at first, then with more force as the smoke thickens and the bark begins to glow. The sound of his breath is steady, controlled, meditative. This is not a task you rush. The bark catches first with smoke, then with a small, almost invisible flame that grows as he continues to blow. The flame touches the kindling, hesitates, then commits. Within moments, the fire is established, and he begins adding larger pieces. The cave fills with the sharp, clean smell of burning pine, and the temperature begins its slow climb toward comfortable. Here's something fascinating that researchers discovered at a 300,000-year-old site in Israel. The hearth at Cavemen Cave was positioned in the exact center of the living space, at a height and distance from the walls that optimized both heating and ventilation. Even more remarkably, this same spot was used for 200 millennia, hundreds of thousands of individual fires, all in the same location. The people who used that cave weren't randomly dumping wood and hoping for the best. They were working with principles they understood deeply, even if they couldn't articulate them in scientific language. Your fire is the same. It's centered. It's positioned for optimal draft. And now that it's established, it begins to transform the cave from a cold stone chamber into something approaching cozy. The limestone walls, which have been slowly radiating their stored summer heat all winter at a rate too subtle to feel, now begin to warm from the fire's side as well. The temperature differential creates subtle air currents that circulate throughout the space, mixing cold and warm, preventing stratification. You feed the fire steadily for the first hour, building up a bed of coals. This is the foundation of your night's warmth. Flames are dramatic but inefficient. Most of their heat rises straight up and exits through the cave entrance, wasted. Coals, however, radiate heat in all directions and can maintain high temperatures for hours with minimal fuel. By the time the sun fully sets, you have a glowing bed of coals 6 inches deep and 2 feet across, and the cave is genuinely warm. Someone jokes that this is better than the inn at the river crossing, the one with the leaky roof and the fleas. Everyone laughs because it's true. That inn cost 3 days' worth of fish, and you still woke up cold and itchy. This cave is free, and if you do wake up itchy, at least you'll know exactly which child forgot to check their bedding for insects. The fire becomes the center of social life immediately. The pregnant woman sits close, warming her hands and feet, while someone works tallow into her cracked heels. The children roast strips of dried meat on green sticks, burning their tongues in their impatience. 2 of the adults are working on hide, scraping and softening it by the fire's light, their hands moving in rhythms so practiced they barely need to look. Someone is telling a story about the winter 3 years ago, when the river froze solid enough to walk across, and how the ice sang in the night like whales calling to each other. This is the social engineering that makes winter survival possible. Not just the physical comfort of fire and shelter, but the psychological comfort of community, story, laughter, shared work. Isolation kills as surely as cold does, and your ancestors knew it. The cave isn't just warm, it's full of life. And that life is its own kind of heat. You're about to discover that Paleolithic bedding was not, in fact, a thin hide thrown over cold stone. The archaeological evidence tells a much more interesting story, one of layered sophistication that would make a modern mattress engineer nod with approval. It starts with grass. Not just any grass, but specific species chosen for their insulating properties. In Border Cave, South Africa, researchers found bedding layers dating back 200,000 years, made from Panicoidea grasses, the same family that includes modern crops like corn and sorghum. These grasses are thick-stemmed, hollow, and when dried and bundled, they create millions of tiny air pockets. Still air, as you've already learned with the cave walls, is an excellent insulator. You and 3 others spent yesterday afternoon cutting grass from a nearby meadow. It was tedious, cold work. Your hands went numb after the first hour, but you gathered enough to build a foundation layer 30 centimeters thick. That's about 12 inches, which doesn't sound like much until you realize you're creating a barrier of trapped air between your body and the stone floor that's been cold for millennia. The grass gets spread across the sleeping area in loose, fluffy piles. You don't pack it down. That would compress the air pockets and ruin the insulation. Instead, you fluff it, like you're preparing the world's most primitive down comforter. The smell is sweet and dry, like hay in summer. And somehow that smell makes the cave feel more like home than anything else you've done today. But here's where your ancestors were genuinely brilliant. Underneath the grass, you lay a thin layer of ash from old fires. The ash serves multiple purposes. First, it's a desiccant. It absorbs any moisture that might rise from the stone floor, keeping the grass dry. Wet grass is worse than no grass because it conducts heat away from your body instead of insulating. Second, and this is the clever part, ash repels insects. The Border Cave evidence shows this clearly. People laid ash, then grass, then more ash, creating a barrier that made life difficult for fleas, lice, and other parasites. In some camps, they took this even further. Researchers found evidence of Tarchonanthus camphoratus, camphor bush, mixed into the bedding. This plant contains natural insect repellents, and when crushed and scattered through the grass, it created a medieval bug zappers. Even better, when the bedding got too infested or worn down after a few weeks, they'd burn the entire thing, creating fresh ash for the next layer, while simultaneously killing any insect eggs or larvae. Waste management and pest control in one satisfying fire. Your bedding grows in layers: ash, then grass, then animal hides with the fur side up. The hides are primarily deer. You brought 6 of them, carefully tanned and softened until they're supple as cloth. The fur creates another layer of trapped air, while also providing a softer surface than grass alone. Some of the hides are larger and will serve as blankets, but the foundation layers go down fur side up, so you're sleeping on softness rather than the rough leather reverse. The sleeping area is communal, and this is where the real genius of winter cave life reveals itself. 15 people arranged carefully in the space between the fire and the back wall, close enough to share body heat, but not so close that you're lying on top of each other. The pregnant woman gets the warmest spot, closest to the fire, but not so close that sparks are a concern. The children nestle in the middle, where they're surrounded by adults. The strongest hunters take the positions nearest the entrance, both because they can tolerate more cold and because they're the first line of defense if something tries to come in during the night. This arrangement isn't just about warmth, it's about thermal efficiency. A single human body at rest produces about 100 watts of heat. Multiply that by 15 people in close proximity, and you're generating 1,500 watts of continuous heat, equivalent to a space heater, just from being alive. That heat gets trapped in the bedding, reflected by the back wall, supplemented by the fire's coals. And the result is a microclimate that can be genuinely comfortable, even when it's well below freezing outside. You settle into your spot, and the grass compresses slightly under your weight, conforming to your body. The hide is soft against your cheek, and through it, you can feel the gentle warmth rising from the other bodies around you. Your nephew curls against your back. He's 7, and still young enough that no one minds the closeness. His breathing is already slowing towards sleep, and his warmth seeps through your clothing like a gift. Someone near the fire is still awake, tending the coals, adding one last piece of wood. The firelight creates dancing shadows on the ceiling, and for a moment you watch them, mesmerized. They look almost like the animals painted on cave walls you've seen in other shelters. Bison and horses running across the stone. Your people don't paint much, but you understand the impulse. The cave has its own beauty once you learn to see it. Here's something modern sleep researchers would find fascinating. Studies of contemporary hunter-gatherers show they typically sleep 6 to 7 hours per night, with winter sleep averaging about an hour longer than summer sleep. They go to bed roughly 3 hours after sunset, during the period when temperature is falling, and wake before dawn at the coldest point of the night. They rarely nap during the day, and they sleep through the night without the first sleep, second sleep pattern that some historians claim was universal before artificial lighting. What this suggests is that your sleep tonight will be remarkably similar to that of someone in the 21st century. Solid, sustained, and surprisingly refreshing. The difference is that you've earned it. You've walked miles, made shelter, built fire, prepared food, and engineered comfort from raw materials. Your body is genuinely tired in a way that modern bodies often aren't. And your mind is quiet because tomorrow's problems are simple. Stay warm, find food, maintain the fire. No emails, no deadlines, no alarm clock set for an hour that feels like violence. The bedding holds you like a hand. It's not memory foam, but it's also not uncomfortable. The grass provides cushioning, the hides provide warmth, and the other bodies around you provide both heat and security. You're not alone in the dark. You're surrounded by your people, and somewhere in the deeper chambers of your brain, this triggers ancient responses that modern humans rarely feel anymore. The profound safety of the clan, the rightness of shared sleep, the knowledge that someone is watching while you rest. Your grandfather, who's been tending the fire, finally lies down in his own spot. He's the last one awake, and as he settles in, a communal sigh seems to move through the group. Everyone exhales, relaxes, lets go. The fire has settled to coals that will burn for hours without attention. The entrance is blocked enough to stop the worst drafts, but open enough for air. The temperature in the cave has stabilized around 55 degrees. Cold by modern standards, but when you're wrapped in hides with 14 other warm bodies nearby, it's perfectly comfortable. Outside, the blizzard intensifies. You can hear the wind howling, a sound like wolves singing to each other across vast distances. But in here, you're untouchable. The cave holds you. The fire warms you. The bedding cushions you. And slowly, inevitably, you begin to drift towards sleep. Something shifts in your awareness as sleep approaches. Something your modern mind might not recognize, but which was familiar to every one of your ancestors. You're not falling asleep alone. You're being pulled down into darkness by the collective breath of 15 people, all relaxing at once. all surrendering to rest in the same moment, and the synchronization of it is both physical and profound. Listen. That's not just your nephew breathing behind you. That's your sister, 3 bodies over, and the old woman by the fire, and the children nested in the middle. At first, the rhythms are individual. Fast breaths from the children, slow and steady from the adults. The occasional deeper breath of someone settling more completely into comfort. But gradually, without anyone trying or even noticing, the breaths begin to synchronize. This isn't mysticism, it's biology. When humans sleep in close proximity, their bodies naturally entrain to each other. Heart rates synchronize, breathing patterns match. Even brain waves begin to coordinate in the deeper stages of sleep. Modern sleep labs have documented this with couples sharing beds, but imagine it multiplied by 15 people, all of whom have spent every night of their lives sleeping in groups. The synchronization is deeper, more complete, and it serves a purpose. Synchronized sleep means synchronized vulnerability, but it also means synchronized vigilance. You drop into deep sleep together, but you also surface toward lighter sleep together, which means that if one person wakes, alerted by a sound or a change in the air, others wake too, or at least drift closer to waking. It's a distributed alarm system, hardwired into human neurology by 100,000 years of sleeping in exactly this formation, in exactly this way. The fire pops softly, and you feel a ripple of micro-awakenings move through the group. Not full consciousness, just a brief check-in. A moment where some deeper part of the brain asks, "Threat?" and receives the answer, "No," and allows sleep to deepen again. This happens dozens of times per night. So subtle you'd never remember it in the morning. But it's part of the safety net that makes deep sleep possible in a world where predators are real. Your people don't have a word for what modern psychologists call social sleeping, but you know its value intimately. The children sleep better when surrounded by adults. The adults sleep better when they can hear the children's steady breathing, confirming that all is well. The old ones, who wake more frequently with aching joints and full bladders, provide inadvertent security by their very wakefulness, scanning the environment during their brief periods of consciousness before settling back down. The pregnant woman shifts, trying to find a comfortable position for her belly. Someone, probably her sister, adjusts automatically, making space, and the ripple of movement spreads outward as others accommodate without fully waking. This is the dance of communal sleep. Constant, tiny adjustments, unconscious cooperation, bodies moving around each other like water finding its level. Here's something that would fascinate modern researchers. You're about to sleep better than most people in industrialized societies ever will. Not despite the conditions, but because of them. Your body is genuinely tired from physical labor. Your stomach is full enough. You ate well tonight. Roasted roots and dried meat, and a thin porridge made from ground seeds. Your temperature is optimal. Cool enough that your core can lower slightly, which is necessary for deep sleep, but not so cold that your body has to work to generate heat. More than that, you're sleeping without artificial light pollution, without alarm clocks, without the low-grade stress of modern life that keeps cortisol levels elevated even during sleep. Your circadian rhythm is perfectly aligned with the natural cycle of daylight. You've spent the last 3 hours after sunset in firelight, which is red-shifted and doesn't suppress melatonin the way blue light does. Your body knows it's time to sleep with a certainty that modern bodies, confused by screens and overhead lighting, rarely achieve. The coals glow like small orange moons, providing just enough light that the cave never becomes truly dark. This matters more than you might think. Complete darkness is disorienting for humans. We're visual creatures, and being unable to see anything triggers low-level anxiety even in sleep. But the gentle, steady glow of banked coals is perfect. bright enough to prevent that primordial fear of total darkness, but dim enough that it doesn't disrupt sleep hormones. It's the original nightlight, perfected over millennia of use. Someone is snoring, light, rhythmic, almost musical. No one minds. In fact, the sound is oddly comforting, confirmation that sleep is happening, that all is well enough for someone to sink that deeply into unconsciousness. In modern life, snoring is treated as a sleep disorder, something to be fixed with devices and surgery. But in the context of group sleeping, moderate snoring might actually have a function. It provides auditory white noise that masks smaller, potentially disturbing sounds, while also signaling to light sleepers that someone else is maintaining deep sleep, which means the environment must be safe.
The warmth of the bodies around you is a tangible thing now, a shared heat that rises through the bedding and creates a pocket of almost toasty air at the level of your face. Your feet, which were cold when you first lay down, have gradually warmed as your own body heat reflects back from the bedding and mixes with the ambient warmth of the group. This is the thermal mass of humanity. 15 bodies adding up to something greater than the sum of their parts. You're hovering now at the edge of sleep, in that liminal space where thoughts become strange and loose, where the boundary between waking and dreaming blurs like smoke. Your last conscious thought is wondering if the snow has stopped. But before you can complete the thought, it dissolves into something else, something wordless, and you're gone. The sleep circle holds you through the night like a living thing, breathing as one, warm and safe in the dark heart of winter. Morning is still hours away when you surface briefly from sleep, and what strikes you immediately is how comfortable you are. Not just tolerable, not just surviving, actually comfortable. Your body is warm, your bedding is soft, and the cave is quiet except for the gentle orchestra of breathing bodies and the faint whisper of wind outside that can't reach you. This is the brutal gift of winter that modern people have forgotten. It gives you permission to rest. In summer, there's always something to do. The daylight stretches long, and with it comes the expectation of work, gathering, hunting, processing, preparing. The world is abundant, which means you're obligated to take advantage of that abundance while it lasts. But winter? Winter says, stop. The days are short, the animals are scarce, the plants are dormant, the world itself is sleeping, and so you can sleep too, without guilt, without the nagging sense that you should be doing something more productive. You shift slightly, and the grass beneath you makes a soft, rustling sound. The movement causes your nephew to press closer against your back, seeking warmth in his sleep. His body heat is a small sun between your shoulder blades, and you're grateful for it. This is efficiency that modern heating systems can never quite replicate. The targeted, personal warmth of another living body, responsive and adaptive in ways that forced air and radiators are not. Researchers studying modern hunter-gatherer societies have discovered something counterintuitive. People living traditional lifestyles in harsh climates often report higher sleep quality than people in climate-controlled modern homes. The theory is that when external conditions are genuinely challenging, the body prioritizes sleep more intensely. Your stress hormones, which would spike in response to chronic, unresolved modern anxieties, are actually lower because your stresses are immediate and concrete. You needed shelter, you got shelter. You needed fire, you made fire. You needed food, you ate. Simple problems with simple solutions create a kind of psychological clarity that allows for deeper rest. Outside, the blizzard that started at dusk is still howling. But the sound has changed. There's a muffled quality to it now that tells you snow has piled up significantly. By morning, the entrance to the cave will be partially blocked, creating an even more effective windbreak and seal. Some winters, caves can get snowed in completely, requiring excavation to exit. But that's not a crisis.
It's just more insulation. Another layer of protection between you and the cold. The coals in the hearth are still glowing, though they've diminished to perhaps a quarter of their evening intensity. This is by design. The thick oak log your grandfather placed before sleep is doing its job, smouldering slowly, releasing heat at a steady rate that keeps the cave temperature stable. In another hour or two, someone will wake enough to add more wood. But for now, the residual heat is sufficient. The stones lining the hearth are still warm to the touch, not hot enough to burn, but warm enough that if you pressed your hand against them, you'd feel the stored heat radiating out like a low-grade sun. This is the part that modern people miss when they imagine cave life. It wasn't constant suffering. Yes, winter was brutal. Yes, people died. From cold, from hunger, from infected wounds and difficult childbirths, and 100 other causes that modern medicine has largely conquered. But for those who survived, for those who knew how to work with the environment rather than against it, there were moments of genuine comfort. Moments like this, wrapped in soft hides with full belly and warm fire, surrounded by family, safe from the storm. These weren't rare exceptions. They were the norm for successful winter camps. Your body cycles through sleep stages in roughly 90-minute intervals, and you're currently in a lighter phase, which is why external sensations can reach you without fully waking you. You're aware of the cave, the bodies, the fire, but in a dreamy, distant way. It's like being underwater. Sounds are muffled, sensations are softened, and nothing seems urgent enough to require full consciousness. Historians still argue about whether prehistoric humans experienced insomnia the way modern people do. There's no way to know for certain. They didn't leave journals complaining about sleepless nights. But the evidence suggests that chronic insomnia is largely a modern phenomenon, tied to artificial light, irregular schedules, psychological stress, and disconnection from natural circadian rhythms. Your body knows when to sleep because the sun has set, because you're genuinely physically tired, because your melatonin production hasn't been disrupted by blue light from screens. You don't lie awake worrying about abstract future problems, because your problems are immediate and concrete. Stay warm, find food, maintain the group. Once those needs are met, as they are now, there's nothing to worry about until tomorrow. The old woman by the fire wakes fully for a moment. You hear her shift, hear the soft crackle as she adds 2 pieces of wood to the coals, hears her blow gently to encourage them to catch. The fire brightens slightly, casting dancing shadows on the cave walls, and warmth pulses outward in a gentle wave. She settles back down, and within minutes her breathing returns to the slow rhythm of sleep. This is how the fire is maintained through the night, not through formal watches or schedules, but through the natural wakings of light sleepers and the elderly, who need to rise anyway for bodily functions, and who, in rising, tend the communal warmth. You drift deeper again, and time becomes elastic. Minutes might be hours, hours might be minutes. There's no clock, no schedule, no artificial divisions of darkness. Sleep is simply the state you're in when you're not awake. And waking will happen when your body decides it's time, when the light outside begins to change, when the cold at the cave entrance becomes pronounced enough to signal dawn. The pregnant woman dreams, and in her dream she cries out softly, not in fear but in surprise. Someone near her, probably her partner, reaches out in sleep and touches her shoulder, a gentle grounding, and she quiets. This too is part of the sleep circle's function. The group responds to distress automatically, even in sleep. providing comfort and security without requiring full wakefulness. You're never truly alone in your dreams here. The clan surrounds you, even in the unconscious places. Snow continues to fall outside, and the wind continues to howl. But these sounds become part of the soundscape of sleep, white noise that your brain learns to ignore, or even finds comforting in its consistency. The danger would be silence, which might signal that something is wrong, that something has changed. But the storm's steady voice says that nothing has changed, that the world is exactly as it should be, that sleep can continue. Your core temperature drops slightly as you enter deeper sleep, which is exactly what should happen. The body conserves energy during sleep by lowering its thermostat a degree or two, and the bedding arrangement allows this to happen safely. If you were sleeping alone on cold stone, this drop in core temperature would trigger shivering and wakefulness as your body fought to prevent hypothermia. But surrounded by warm bodies and insulated by layers of grass and hide, the slight cooling is harmless, even beneficial, deepening the quality of your rest. The children dream their children's dreams, twitching and murmuring in the language of sleep. One of them is running in his dream. You can tell by the way his legs move slightly, the way his breathing quickens. He's chasing something, or being chased, and the dream is vivid enough that his body responds. But he doesn't wake, and the dream passes, and his breathing slows again to the steady rhythm of deep sleep. This is the winter night at its purest. A small group of humans in a stone shelter, kept alive by fire and knowledge and cooperation, sleeping through the hours when the world is most hostile. It's not romantic. There's nothing romantic about the very real possibility of death if any part of this system fails. But it's profoundly human. This ability to engineer comfort from harsh conditions, to transform a cold cave into a warm refuge, to sleep soundly while winter rages outside. The hours pass in their timeless way, measured only by the slow burning of wood and the cycling of sleep stages, and the imperceptible rotation of the earth toward morning. You're dreaming now, deeply, and the dream takes you to the walls of the cave. In the dream, the walls are covered in paintings, not the walls of this cave, which are bare limestone, but the walls of a cave you visited once as a child, where your grandmother took you to see the ancient images left by people so long ago that no one remembers their names. The paintings move in your dream, the way they seem to move in the firelight when you were young. Bison run across the stone, their legs extending and contracting with the flicker of flames. Horses rear and gallop, their manes streaming. Human hands, dozens of them, hundreds of them, press against the rock in ochre and charcoal. A crowd of palms from across the generations. You place your own hand against one, and it's warm, and through it, you feel the pulse of everyone who has ever slept in caves, everyone who has ever tended fire, everyone who has ever watched winter from the safety of stone. This is your ancestors' cinema, painted on cave walls across Europe and Asia and Africa, the first movie screens where flickering firelight brought images to life. Modern people visit these caves and see them in steady electric light, which makes the paintings static and two-dimensional, but you've seen them the way they were meant to be seen, in firelight, where they move and breathe and tell stories without words. Historians still argue about why Paleolithic peoples painted in caves. Theories range from hunting magic to shamanic visions to proto-religious ceremonies to simple artistic expression. Probably all of these are true in different contexts. What matters for your dream is that the walls hold memory, and that memory is alive, and that sleeping in caves means sleeping surrounded by the stories of everyone who came before. In your dream, You understand something that your waking mind struggles to articulate. That the cave is not just shelter but portal, not just stone but story, not just protection but connection. Every person who has ever slept where you're sleeping now has left something behind. Not just the physical traces that archaeologists dig up, but something less tangible and more important. They've left the knowledge that this works, that humans can survive winter, that with fire and cooperation and careful thought, even the brutal cold becomes bearable. The dream shifts, the way dreams do, and now you're walking through snow under stars so bright they seem close enough to touch. You're alone in this part of the dream, but not lonely. The snow is deep, up to your thighs, but you're not cold. You're searching for something, though you don't know what, and the searching itself is the point. The snow crunches under your feet with a sound like breaking ice, and your breath plumes out in clouds that hang in the still air like thoughts made visible. You come to a clearing, and in the clearing is a fire. Not your fire from the cave, but a different fire. Older somehow, more essential. People sit around it, but their faces are indistinct, and you realize they're not people from your time. Some of them are wearing clothes you don't recognize, made from materials you've never seen. Some of them seem to glow slightly, as if lit from within. They're talking, but you can't hear the words, just the rhythm of conversation, the music of voices sharing stories around fire. One of them looks up and sees you, and gestures for you to join the circle. You walk forward through snow that isn't cold, and as you approach the fire, you see that what you thought was smoke rising from it is actually made of words. Thousands of words in languages you don't speak, streaming upward into the darkness and becoming stars. This is the dream logic understanding of what fire means. It's not just heat and light, but communication, continuation, the thing that lets humans tell stories across time. Every fire ever lit is the same fire, and everyone who has ever sat around fire is part of the same circle. And time is just a story we tell ourselves to make sense of the eternal now, where all fire exists at once. You sit, and the warmth of the fire in your dream becomes the warmth of your actual sleeping body in the actual cave. And for a moment the two realities overlap perfectly. You're both dreaming by the ancient fire and sleeping in your grass bed, both alone in the snow and surrounded by your clan, both an individual consciousness and part of something vast and continuous. The pregnant woman shifts in her sleep, and in your dream this becomes a baby being born beside the fire. Not her baby, not yet, but all babies, every child ever born in winter, every new human who entered the world in a cave warmed by firelight. The baby cries, and the sound is both in your dream and outside of it, and you realize it's just one of the actual children in the cave making small sleeping sounds. But the dream has transformed it into something mythic and important. Your nephew presses closer against your back, and in your dream this becomes an embrace from someone you've never met, but have always known. An ancestor, or descendant, or simultaneous self in another time. The embrace says, "You are not alone. You have never been alone. Humans have always slept together in the dark and kept each other warm and told each other that morning will come." The dream begins to fade as your sleep cycle moves toward a lighter stage. The fire in your dream dims. The people around it become transparent. The words rising as smoke disperse into meaninglessness. But you're not sad about this fading. It feels natural, the way waking always feels natural, even when dreams are pleasant. The dream has done its work, whatever that work was, and now it's time to drift in lighter sleep, closer to the surface, where the cave is more real than the dream fire, and morning is coming closer with each breath. The painted animals on the dream cave walls stop moving and return to being static images, though even in this lighter sleep, you can feel their presence. watching over you, the way they've watched over countless sleepers across the millennia. They're patient, these painted creatures. They know that someone will always come to sleep beneath them, that fire will always flicker on their walls, that humans will always need both shelter and story. You hover in that space between dream and waking for a timeless while, aware of both worlds without being fully in either. It's peaceful here, suspended between stone and story, between the individual body curled in grass and hide, and the vast continuity of human experience that connects you to everyone who has ever slept in caves during winter. Somewhere in the deep distance, a wolf howls. The sound penetrates your dream like a thread of silver, and for a moment, you're listening to it with prehistoric ears, interpreting its pitch and rhythm for information about distance and pack size and intent. The howl says, "I am here. I am alive. I am searching." And your sleeping self responds without words. I am here too. I am warm. I am safe. I am not your prey tonight. The wolf's voice fades, or perhaps your awareness of it fades, and you sink again into deeper sleep, into darkness that's no longer populated by dreams, but is simply the quiet darkness of rest, of restoration, of the body doing its nightly work of repair and consolidation, while consciousness takes its temporary leave. The fire burns down to coals again. The snow continues falling. The cave holds you all in its stone palm, patient and impervious, doing what it has done for millions of winters before you arrived, and will do for millions of winters after you leave. You're just passing through, borrowing its shelter for a season. But while you're here, you're perfectly matched to it, your needs and its properties, creating a temporary equilibrium that feels, in the depth of sleep, almost like permanence. The first hint of morning comes not as light, but as temperature change. The coldest part of the night arrives just before dawn, and your body registers this shift even in sleep. It's subtle, maybe a 2-degree drop, but after hours of stable warmth, the change is enough to bring you slightly closer to waking without quite pulling you into full consciousness. This is when you begin to understand something profound about how your body relates to sleep, something that modern people have largely forgotten. Your body's internal clock isn't just tracking time, it's tracking temperature, light, and a dozen other environmental cues that all point toward morning. Your ancestors didn't wake to alarms. They woke because their bodies, perfectly attuned to natural rhythms after countless generations of sleeping under similar conditions, knew when day was approaching. Your core temperature, which dropped during deep sleep, begins its natural rise. Cortisol levels start to increase, preparing you for waking activity. Even with your eyes closed, even deep in the cave where no direct sunlight can reach, your body knows what time it is with uncanny accuracy. This knowledge isn't intellectual, it's cellular, hormonal, ancient beyond measure. Someone else wakes first, probably your grandfather, whose old bones can't quite hold sleep as long as they used to. You hear him rise quietly, hear the soft sounds of him tending the fire, adding wood with practiced silence so as not to wake others who need rest more than he does. The fire grows brighter, and through your closed eyelids you register the change in light levels. Not enough to wake you, but enough to begin the process of surfacing toward consciousness. The fire's renewed warmth reaches you in waves, and your body responds by relaxing even further, knowing that the coldest part of night has passed, that warmth is increasing rather than decreasing, that the danger of cold has lifted for another day. This is when sleep is sweetest, in the hour before waking, when you're warm and safe, and your body knows that rising will be pleasant rather than a shock to the system. Modern people often struggle with this transition from sleep to waking because their sleeping environments are either too warm all night, which prevents the natural temperature drop that deepens sleep, or because they're jolted awake by alarms before their bodies have completed their natural waking cycle. But here in the cave, your waking will be gradual and natural, timed to coincide with your body's own readiness, rather than the arbitrary demands of schedules and obligations. You become aware of the sounds around you with increasing clarity. The fire crackling, someone's breathing slightly deeper than sleep, but not quite awake. The wind outside has died down, and the quality of silence tells you the snow has stopped. One of the children murmurs something in their sleep, a word you almost recognize, but which fades before you can grasp its meaning. The grass beneath you rustles as someone shifts position. These sounds don't disturb, they orient. They tell you where you are, who you're with, that all is well. Your nephew wakes before you do. You feel him stir, feel the change in his breathing, feel him stretch carefully so as not to disturb others. He rises and pads quietly to the fire, where your grandfather greets him with a soft word and hands him a warm stone wrapped in leather. The boy holds it against his chest, seeking warmth after the brief exposure of rising from the communal bed. You smile without opening your eyes, remembering being that age, remembering how the morning cold felt sharp and alive after the woolly warmth of sleep. Here's where modern understanding of sleep misses something crucial. You're not waking to face a day of drudgery or obligation. You're waking to face a day of purposeful activity that your body and mind are evolved to find satisfying. You'll need to check the food stores. Someone should go see if the storm has brought down any trees that might have trapped small game. The fire needs more wood. The entrance needs to be cleared of snow. These aren't chores in the modern sense, they're life, direct and immediate, and your body is designed to find meaning in them. The pregnant woman wakes, gasping slightly, one hand on her belly. Someone, her partner, is immediately alert beside her, asking a question you can't hear. She shakes her head, smiles, says something reassuring. Just the baby moving, asserting its presence, reminding everyone that spring will bring new life. The thought is comforting somehow, that even in the depth of winter, even in the brutal cold, life continues, prepares, persists. You open your eyes finally, and the cave resolves around you in the firelight. The walls are exactly as they were when you closed your eyes, but they feel different somehow, more familiar, more yours. You've slept here now, dreamed here, and that transforms the space from mere shelter into something approaching home. Not permanent home. You'll leave when the weather breaks, but home enough for now, which is all that matters. Your body feels rested in a way that modern bodies rarely do. There's no grogginess, no desire to stay in bed for just 5 more minutes. You're simply awake, ready, present. This is what sleep is supposed to do. Restore you completely, return you to full capacity, prepare you for the day ahead. When sleep is aligned with natural rhythms, when your body has done its work without interruption or interference, waking is not difficult. It's just the next natural state, as inevitable and comfortable as sleep itself was hours ago. You rise and stretch, feeling your spine realign, feeling your muscles wake. The cold hits you immediately. The air outside the bedding is significantly colder than the cocoon you've been sleeping in, but it's invigorating rather than unpleasant. Your body responds by increasing circulation, generating heat, coming fully online. Within moments, you're comfortable again, your internal furnace burning efficiently, your breath visible in the cool air, but your core warm and stable. Outside, the world is transformed. Through the partially snowed-in entrance, you can see brilliant white and blinding brightness. The storm has passed, and the sun is rising into a clear sky, and everything, every branch, every stone, every surface, is covered in fresh snow that sparkles like scattered diamonds. It's beautiful in a way that takes your breath, beautiful in a way that makes the struggle of winter feel worthwhile. You understand, in this moment of waking in a warm cave with full belly and rested body, while looking out at pristine winter beauty, why your body remembers this. Why modern humans, sleeping in climate-controlled bedrooms on expensive mattresses, with every physical comfort attended to, still somehow feel that something is missing. What's missing is this: the contrast, the earned rest, the direct relationship between effort and comfort, the presence of others, the alignment with natural cycles, the purposeful activity that gives meaning to rest. Your ancestors didn't have the best sleep, despite living in caves during brutal winters. They had the best sleep because of it, because every element of their sleeping arrangement was optimized through generations of experience, because their bodies were genuinely tired from meaningful work, because their circadian rhythms were perfectly aligned with natural light, because they slept in groups that provided both physical warmth and psychological security, because the very harshness of the environment made the achievement of comfort that much more satisfying.
This is what your body remembers, buried deep in your DNA, encoded in your neurology. That sleep is supposed to be communal, purposeful, earned, aligned with nature, and surrounded by people who matter. That a truly good night's sleep isn't just about comfort, it's about context, connection, and the satisfaction of having done what needed to be done to secure that rest. The cave is stirring fully now. Children are waking, adults are rising, the day is beginning. But you take one more moment to simply stand there, feeling rested, feeling warm, feeling connected to the long chain of humans who have woken in caves just like this across the millennia. You're one more link in that chain, one more person who learned to sleep well in brutal conditions, one more proof that humans are magnificent adapters, engineers of comfort, survivors of winter. And as you turn away from the entrance to begin your day, you carry with you the knowledge that tonight, when the sun sets and the cold returns, you'll sleep just as well again. Because you know how. Because your ancestors taught you, across the vast distance of time, through the medium of your own body's memory. The cave kept you safe. The fire kept you warm. The people around you kept you from being alone. And that was enough. That was everything. The fire burns lower now as we come to the end of our journey together. And it's time for you to find your own rest, in your own time, in your own place. You've walked with these ancient people through their winter night, felt what they felt, understood what they knew, and maybe, just maybe, you've learned something about your own sleep, your own body,
Your own deep need for rest that feels earned and purposeful and connected. Your bed tonight might not be grass and hide in a limestone cave, but your body is the same body that slept in those caves, carries the same wisdom, responds to the same rhythms. When you close your eyes, you're joining that long chain of humans who have always found ways to sleep through winter, who have always engineered comfort from challenging conditions, who have always known that sleep is sacred, necessary, and beautifully, simply human. So let yourself sink into your pillow the way those ancient people sank into their grass bedding. Let yourself feel the warmth around you, the way they felt the fire's warmth. Let yourself trust that morning will come, that you're safe, that rest is yours to claim. Your body knows how to do this. It's been doing this for hundreds of thousands of years. All you need to do is let go, breathe deeply, and trust the ancient wisdom that lives in your bones. The cave is quiet now. The fire is just embers. The people are all sleeping, breathing together in the dark. And you can join them there, in that place beyond time, where all sleep is one sleep, where all rest is the same rest that's been taken since humans first learned to close their eyes.